Hello everyone, and welcome to this performance of Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde, the Song of the Earth. This is Masterworks 5, the final concert in the FM Symphony's 2020-21 season. My name is Paul Hegland, and I'm the Executive Director of the FMSO. I'm delighted to welcome you here. You're going to enjoy Das Lied von der Erde, what many call Mahler's greatest symphony, even though he never called it a symphony. Tenor Brennen Guillory and mezzo-soprano Daryl Freedman sing each movement of the 6 movements in this piece, alternating tenor and mezzo, etc. It's a song of the earth, as the title says. It's a song of life. It's a song of relationships and friendships. It's a song of pondering what comes in the hereafter, as Mahler did so well. I know you're going to enjoy it. The orchestration is glorious and the singers are spectacular. Now, the orchestration is glorious, but it is a slimmed down orchestra. You'll see 24 people on stage, 21 in the orchestra, plus Maestro Zimmermann and the 2 soloists. And yet it's still pure Mahler. It's wonderful. The orchestration doesn't leave anything out, sounds exactly like Mahler, just a slimmed down orchestra. We're looking forward to this performance, but we're also looking forward to next year, and we hope that you will be able to rejoin us next year. In fact, we're planning on it. Soon we will release the dates for next year, and shortly after that, we hope to release the preliminary plans for repertoire for next year. It's all preliminary, of course, because it's still very difficult to plan with any certainty right now. We think we know where the trends are going. We have a good idea of what things will be happening in terms of vaccinations, in terms of the protocols that NDSU has put in place. But our priority is safety, and we've been happy to abide by those protocols this year, even though it meant no live audience. So we're looking forward to being safe next year, but also to welcoming you back to live music with the FMSO. Again, enjoy Mahler's Das Lied von der Erde. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our final concert of the season, where we are kind of bookending the season, I would like to say, because we started with Mahler's 4th Symphony in October, and the ending concert now is his, I was going to say symphony. Actually, it's called Das Lied von der Erde. It's a symphonic piece, big symphonic piece with 2 singers, and it was written between his 8th and 9th symphony, so it doesn't really have a number. And we are actually performing, like we did with the 4th Symphony, a pared down arrangement. Don't worry, it's all the notes are there. It is all genuine Mahler, but it's a much smaller orchestra because, of course, of the pandemic and the situation we're in. And I remember saying this with the 4th Symphony. I think it applies to this piece too, Das Lied von der Erde, that, of course, one is missing a real element of size and opulence to the sound, but the spirit behind the music, if anything, somehow in a distillation could be even stronger. There are pros and cons, but there's certainly a number of pros, I think, for doing a piece in this sort of arrangement. Also, the clarity of the instrumentation will be so strong because of so few players playing the same part. So this is a piece for orchestra and 2 singers, and I'd like to introduce our singers. Daryl Freedman, mezzo-soprano, and Brennen Guillory, tenor. And I've worked with these 2 artists before. Brennen quite a few times now. Yeah. I think maybe 3, and we've done other projects as well.
Yeah. Workshops and things.
That's right. And Daryl, of course, we worked 2 years ago with the Verdi Requiem with another orchestra I conduct. And to me, that was a fantastic experience. I'm so glad you accepted my invitation to do this. So I think, why don't we start by perhaps you could both talk a little bit about the challenges of the piece and about what you think about the music and the text. Daryl, maybe start with you.
Sure.
I mean, this piece is just unbelievable. And the way that I think of Mahler, I feel like the more you study Mahler, the deeper you go into studying his orchestrations, his tonalities, his everything. It's so rich, and it just gets more and more meaningful the more time you spend with it. He's just a genius. So getting to sing this with you is just a dream, especially coming out of a pandemic where I haven't been able to perform with anyone for an entire year.
It's amazing.
So coming out of this isolation and getting to make music, be with my music community again, it has just been an absolute dream. So this piece, it discusses so much. I mean, the universe, eternity, infinity, the beauty of the world, nature, it's everything. You know, I think for me, being in a pandemic, being isolated in my house for so long, something that really grounded me has been nature. And Mahler was, I mean, he obviously deeply loved this earth and nature. And the way that he depicts it is just so gorgeous. So in all of the pieces, it talks about the beauty of this world, the beauty all around us. And then it also discusses mortality, really, especially in the first song and especially in the last song. But the mortality is not scary.
It's not morbid, exactly. And
it's not morbid.
You know, it makes me think, everything you say is absolutely right. I mean, Mahler actually, he loved nature, so sensitive to it. He had a composing hut, which was right in the woods.
Oh, I saw a picture of it.
So he was inspired by nature all around him. He'd go for long walks, as you probably know. And almost all of his music, certainly his symphonic music, I mean, the first symphony, right out of the bat, the very beginning of the first symphony is about kind of the awakening of the birds at dawn, this sort of thing. I mean, every piece of his is suffused with references to nature. And also, as you were saying, of course, with this piece, a big thread of the piece is kind of the duality between mankind and, unfortunately, the destruction that mankind wreaks versus the beauty and, importantly, the eternity of nature. Once we're done, nature goes on forever. And in fact, the song you were talking about when I interrupted you, which is the last big song of this piece, is absolutely about the... it's not morbid at all. It's about... I don't know what it's about. The afterlife, eternity, whatever. Do you want to maybe carry on about what you were saying?
Well, you know what I was thinking about? The way that Mahler depicts the death is this eternity that goes on, the blue expanding forever and ever. And I love that he uses blue, because if infinity is something that we as humans really can't comprehend, but when we look out at the ocean and we look up at the sky, we see this blue that seems to go on forever. So in a way, Mahler is depicting this concept that is so hard for us to understand, and he's depicting it in a way that we can understand, in a very worldly way, even though he's talking about something that is in the universe and outside of this world. He brings it back to the beauty of nature, to the blue, the horizon, expanding forever. And I feel like that's what makes the death so less scary, because it's something familiar that we all can, understand, and we have within ourselves and in our experience. So that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and so it's obviously about death. It's or morbidity, at least in some respects. What you're saying is absolutely right. The ending has this beautiful sense of passing on forever, in direct contrast with the beginning of the piece, the first movement. And let me just say, before coming to you, Brennen, so there are 6 movements to the piece, and each movement is a different poem sung by a different singer. So it alternates between tenor, mezzo, tenor, mezzo, tenor, and then mezzo at the end. And the contrast between the movements are very skillfully done and kind of obvious. So the ending, as you've just talked a little bit about the ending, the beginning is the complete opposite. Would you like to tell us a little bit about what you think of the first song?
Yeah, Mahler. I think Mahler really makes us earn the peaceful eternity at the end by putting us through the ringer at the beginning.
Right.
Because it really starts off with a sort of nihilistic bleakness that is hard to really find, I think, in just in the repertoire. I mean, it really stands out, and it's interesting that it's a Chinese poet and Chinese poetry, and it's very sort of Nietzschean in its nihilism.
Can I just interrupt for a second?
Sure.
So it is Chinese poetry in a sense. It's a selection of poems
Right.
that a German poet actually kind of annotated or translated.
Right.
So
Right.
it's Chinese in sort of philosophical essence,
Yeah.
but it's in German and it's got a German sensibility as well.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert in these things, but so I can't comment completely on the translation and all that. But it's it sort of builds with this. Hey, let's drink. Let's all get together and have a good time and drink. But in the middle of that sort of party is this why are we doing this? Well, because everything is falling apart, everything is decaying, everything is and in the sort of climax of the piece, there's this image. He says, look, there's this ape in the graveyard howling and breaking the night with its horrible screams. And he's really saying that's us. That's us when we're confronted with the decay and the falling apart of things.
Fantastic how he does that musically speaking. So yours, for the whole movement, you're singing at the top of your tessitura, but there you really are
very challenging. It's a
desperate.
very challenging. That the last part of that first piece is very, very challenging, I think, for anybody. I'm sure there are people who can sail through it, but
and
I don't think anyone who would say it was easy.
Even with the small version we're doing, or the fewer players, I should say, not a version, it is the music. Even with this, there's still a battle of sound between you and them, even with the 18 players versus 60.
There's a definite sort of war going on. Or struggle. There's this
frenetic
sort of,
movement.
Yes.
And actually, the point, the sort of culmination of this image of the howling ape, which is us, as you say. The orchestra is, everyone's going bananas. The trumpets and then the bass drum comes in with a huge roll. It's all.
He's
dramatic.
painting. He's definitely painting the picture.
Yeah, absolutely.
No doubt at all.
And then so it starts with again the contrast between the first movement and the last movement is very obvious, but actually each movement in a sense has a strong contrast from one to the other. So we have that movement, and then your first song, which is the second song in the piece, tell us a little bit about that. It's clearly the opposite in a sense.
Right. So where we are here is depicting autumn, the decay of autumn. The flowers are wilting and falling off. And, that symbolizes the decay of our lives, I think. How, we move into winter, we move into the end of our lives, and the bleakness. But then there's a dichotomy within itself because the poetry mentions the sun and the ease and the youth that you experienced in the beginning of life, and longing for that, wishing for that loving beauty to come back into your life. So the dichotomy exists in each song. And
this makes me think of the sort of what I like to call the dualities, if that's not too pompous a phrase, throughout the piece. So you just said, so there's autumn, there's decay, and then there's spring. So there's autumn versus spring, or decay versus renewal. There's innocence versus bitterness in the first movement. There's, of course, being here now versus eternity at the end. Every element of this piece goes from one thing to kind of its opposite.
Right.
Even the thing you were mentioning about the mirror image. There's a poem in this where he actually talks about mirror images. I just want to say, and we'll get to that in a second, I wanted to say, so this second movement, so beautiful, so beautiful. The writing is like only Mahler somehow could do this. The choice of instruments to depict the mood he wants to set. So it begins just with a slithering solo violin line, and he marks this. I love this mark. It says "ermüdet," which in German kind of means weary, which is absolutely perfect. It is sort of weary, tired music talking about the loneliness of autumn, and it's and throughout this sort of thread of violin all the way through, we have these beautiful, sparse, lonely, lamenting, I guess, solo woodwind interjections, and he uses, understandably, mostly the oboe, because the sound of the oboe is probably the most lamenting of the woodwind sounds in a sense. I mean, it's so beautifully crafted and just gets you, doesn't it?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
So we go from and then we get to the third movement, back to our tenor.
Yeah, it's an interesting...
bit of a breath of fresh air.
Another kind of, yes, it's a very different piece too. It's much faster than the second. I kind of get all the fast, sort of more frantic music. She gets the long, beautiful, you know. It's an interesting piece stuck in there in the middle, because it's almost like a little Mozart piano piece. It's very, you know, da-da-da-da-da-da-da. It's very light and kind of boisterous. But it paints this tableau of some well-dressed friends who are having some drinks and enjoying writing poetry. But there's this lake or this pond, and the music really shifts and slows down at one point and says, you know, all of this beauty is reflected in this mirror image. And the music kind of goes back, but it comments on how it's all turned upside down.
And right at that moment of the mirror image, the music becomes dark.
Oh, yes. So it talks about the mirror image. It becomes dark. It becomes slow, more reflective of what... I think it becomes reflective of what are we seeing. And so when it comes back and sort of repeats the motive from the beginning, it's all about everything is turned upside down. Everything is on its head, stood on its head. And you're left with a sense of, is this happiness, this, you know, light, sort of boisterous time between friends, is it really an illusion? Is it really something that, you know, is ephemeral? It just appears to be real.
It's definitely a dark sliver.
It's a dark sliver
within a very bright movement.
Yeah.
And something I just thought about with this, sort of the last movement aside, is these, maybe because it's a late work, so he's so masterful. They're actually, even the first movement is longish, I suppose, but they're very distilled, actually. There's not a note wasted. And for Mahler, if I may say, I mean, he's one of my favorites, but his music is usually incredibly long. And with this piece, there's a conciseness, which, you know, the one you just talked about, this third movement, is about 5 minutes.
Oh, maybe. Well, the first one's 7, I think.
Yeah, and the
third one is
about
like
it's very
3
short.
minutes. I think.
Yeah, very short.
Yeah, it's very short.
But all the things you just said, all those complexities and layers, all within 3 or 4 minutes of music, which on the surface seems bright and happy.
You could miss it if you weren't paying attention. I think you could miss it.
Yeah, maybe.
You'd think you're just doing an ABA sort of a thing, but there's some sort of deeper reflection going on.
I agree.
You don't.
And then we go back to you for the fourth song.
Yes.
Do you want to?
So this song, to me, depicts the dichotomy between the feminine beauty and the masculine, the softness of the feminine and the intenseness of the masculine.
Again, this duality strength I was talking about.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
So in the beginning, we have young girls sitting by the bank of the river collecting flowers, and all of a sudden, a stampede of horses, young men riding these horses, come, and they actually trample on the flowers. And then it says the most beautiful of the young girls glances longingly for the most handsome of the young boys. And
even that is a dichotomy or a duality, because he just ruined their flowers.
Right.
But yet there's, right.
That's true. And she acts poised, but she doesn't show how heartbroken she is and how much she yearns for him.
And there's, you know, the way the orchestra portrays this, there, these sort of swooping, delicate lines with little portamenti. That means little sort of slides. It's seduction music in places.
Yes, very much.
And then that is, of course, the seduction music, if I can call it that, in sharp contrast to the stampede music.
Right. Oh,
which
my
is
goodness, yes.
Where everything is truly chaotic. It's quite a challenge for the orchestra, actually. And again, reminds me of earlier symphonic music of Mahler, this abrupt change from, you know, this beautiful, let's say, seductive melody, then suddenly it's just shattered by this brutal music, which is often actually almost sort of thumbing its nose. You know? It's not subtle.
Right, no.
That's the whole point of it. You know? There are moments where the player, and again with other Mahler symphonies too, the player is asked to raise a wind instrument high up, so the shrieking sound becomes even more shrieking, even more raw, even more, particularly the clarinet, you'll notice, and the horn, very unsubtle, as raw as it can be, and he often marks the very word raw in the text. And then we finally, and then the fifth movement, we're back.
Yes, the Drunkard in Springtime, another drinking song, but one who's been drinking probably for many, many years. and again, the dichotomy here between, you know, someone who's, you know, probably on the edge of death, destitution, is disturbed by a song, a bird that comes and sings and is sort of introducing spring. Is this spring? And I think the question, you know, that's being raised here is, do you embrace this? Do you embrace the new life? Do you embrace the beauty that, you know, there's that dichotomy of the beauty of the natural world, the beauty that surrounds us versus the sort of anxiety and death that is haunting us as well, is really strong here. And it's almost a question of, here is spring, do we embrace it? And the drunkard just says, you know, he's laughing at me. This bird is just laughing. Death or life is just laughing at me. Beauty is laughing at me. Spring is laughing at me. And at the end, he just says, leave me alone, let me be drunk.
And so the similarity with the third movement, I've just thought through that description. So just when the little bird comes, tweet, 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 you think the music's going to be nice, but the music slows down, becomes very sorrowful. Just like in the third one with the mirror image, the music is so the dark sliver comes kind of when the poetry seems to be sweet. But you've just said, you've just revealed
very
why.
dark.
Yeah,
he sees this out of the darkness. I see this.
And the movement as a whole, orchestrally speaking, and of course your vocal line, the drunkenness is displayed by the lurching of the music, and also the ladies and gents, the language of this piece is, you know, it's a very late piece. He died only a year and a half after. He never heard the first performance. But it's right at what tonality is the kind of the language that the classicists use, you know, Mozart, Beethoven, and then it gets a little more complicated in the Romantic period with Tchaikovsky and people like that. And now it's borderline shattering the language itself. And particularly this lurching drunkard song, the harmonies are drunk. I mean, they're kind of wrong.
Yeah. A lot of chromaticism, a lot of
and
what key are we in?
Two keys at the same time.
A lot of jumps that are you sort of lose yourself, like where are you jumping to and from, and where's this thing going? Yeah. And it's a wonderful thing to sing. It's fun to sing. I find it fun. There's like 8 or 9 or 10 A's in it. I don't know the high A's, so it's a challenge. Yeah. But
you got a B flat in there too.
Yeah, there's a B flat. But just one of those. Yeah. Thank goodness. But it's a chance to just bring your whole self into it. You know, you're just singing with your whole self when you sing this. When you sing all of it.
So talk about, you know, singing. Okay, so singing with these masks. I think you have a.
Oh yes. Well, this is the big challenge. I said, I'm doing this, and we're wearing masks. What am I supposed to do? And I talked to some friends, and apparently they've been using this sort of duck-billed looking thing, which. I noticed whenever I first started singing with the mask, but not this one, with just a regular mask, when I would be, especially in the middle of something, I'd take a big breath, the mask would just get sucked up into my mouth. Yeah. And so this mask sort of opens up further away from your face, but it also extends more vertically because I really have to open my mouth in some of these passages.
So
and
when
keep
you
it open.
breathe,
So
when you have to take a big, let's say a quick, strong breath, it doesn't.
it
do that
doesn't.
at all.
Yeah,
No.
it doesn't. And I think you have a kind of an insert in one of your masks, right?
Yes. So my sister was so nice enough to construct a mask for me that she sewed. And, you know, I wanted to make it a little fancy, so it has a little sequins on it. But she created this mask for me that has a little insert so that I don't have to breathe in the mask, and it fits my face in such a way that it feels comfortable enough to open my mouth. And so I'm so grateful that she was so kind
Yeah,
to
that's
make
great.
that for me.
Well, with all these challenges, let's enjoy the performance tonight. And I'm so glad you're with me to present this, one of the greatest pieces, I think.
can't
and I
wait.
hope, audience, you will agree that this is a very special piece.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Mitten in den kleinen Teiche steht ein Pavillon aus grünem, unerseits im Porzellan. Wie der Regen eines Tigers hört die Brücke sich aus Jahren vor dem Pavillon hin. Sitzen Freunde, schöne kleine Trinken, plaudern, manche schreiben Verse nieder. Ihre seine Wärme begleiten, riefen es, ihre seinen Nützen hoffen, wo sich Hilfe lachen. Alles auf dem Kopf stehen, in dem Pavillon aus grünem, unerseits Porzellan, wie ein Hammer steht die Brücke, umgekehrt der Bogen, Freude Schranke kleidet, in den Glauben. Wenn nur ein Traum das Leben ist, warum in Mühe und Not? Ich trinke, bis ich nicht mehr kann, den ganzen Leben Tag. Und wenn ich nicht mehr trinken kann, weil Kehl und Seele frei, so traurig bist du meiner Höhe und Strafe wunderbar. Was wenn ich bei mir war? Eine Vogel singt im Baum. Ich frag ihn, ob schon Frühling sei. Mir ist, als wie der Vogel zwischert, ja, ja. Der Lenz ist da, sein Komme überdacht. Aus tiefstem Schauen lauscht ich auf. Der Vogel singt und lacht und lacht. Ich will mir den Becher neu und leer ihn bis zum Grund und singe ist der Mond der Glanz am schwarzen Firmament. Und wenn ich nicht mehr singen kann, und wenn ich nicht mehr singen kann, So
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Paul Hegland. I'm the executive director of the Fargo-Moorhead Symphony Orchestra. I'm here with Christopher Zimmerman, the music director, and we're going to share a few ideas for next season, thoughts about this season, and hope you find this interesting. Chris, tell us about how easy it was to plan this season.
Not easy, as you know. One of the hardest things was not only dealing with the different parameters that the COVID has thrown at us, is actually having to do it with so much uncertainty about whether the next concert's going to happen. And so, or maybe planning two different types of concerts depending on the size we think we could put up on stage and so on and so forth. All that stuff, which incidentally may bleed into the beginning of next season as well. I'm not quite sure. And that's the whole point. I'm not sure. This uncertainty makes it so difficult to plan concretely as far enough ahead as one would like. Having said that, and I think I've mentioned this before this season in our video interviews, there is a little bit of a silver lining with this pandemic in the sense that it has enabled the orchestra to play probably a bigger variety of different types of symphonic music than we would otherwise do. Certainly, and because of the size limitations, we've played a lot of music which is simply not really in the normal repertoire scope. And I think the arrangements of the two Mahler symphonies we've done have been a very positive experience.
Those are interesting. You've said several times that all the notes are there. It's just reduced forces.
Absolutely. I mean, they're good arrangements.
When I've heard both of them, the Mahler Fourth that we did at the beginning of the season and Das Lied von der Erde for the end of the season here, there are parts where you'll start a movement or something and it's like, oh, Mahler.
Right.
But 16 people instead of 90.
Right.
It's amazing how, and you've said it boils down the essence of the music. It's still there. It's very much Mahler. Carries the tone, the weight, the emotion.
We simply miss the sort of the opulence of orchestral sound.
Right. For our listeners, they may not know a little bit about the parameters that you mentioned we're dealing with. Obviously, everyone knows about the pandemic. Everyone knows about wearing masks and social distancing, those sorts of things. If you've seen our previous concerts, you'll know that all the musicians are wearing masks. They're all socially distanced on the stage. Our host, North Dakota State here in Fargo, gave a capacity limit for the stage, and we are well under that. Their capacity was 35. This will be our biggest concert of the year with, 21 plus 2 soloists plus you, 24.
So 24, 25, that's right.
So this is as big as you will see the orchestra on stage this year. We've had quintets, brass quartet, quintet I think it was, right?
Last concert.
Right. Chamber string groups, 15, 16.
Piano and singer in the first. Yeah.
Right.
That, yeah.
It's been a wide variety, and you're right. It's been great to hear some music that you might normally not hear in an orchestral setting in a concert hall.
And you mentioned, Paul, I'm glad you mentioned the sort of pandemic safety restrictions. So what the listeners probably don't know is the rehearsal schedule also has changed dramatically.
Right.
And actually, I see no silver lining in the rehearsal schedule. We've had to
work harder
because of the way the air has to turn. Our rehearsal schedule is mandated this way, that we have half an hour music rehearsal, 15 minutes off. Half an hour on, 15 minutes off, etc. for the 2.5 hour length of the actual rehearsal time, which means that in some respects, just as you're getting going, you have to stop. And particularly I guess I only have myself to blame. I did choose these Mahler symphonies. When you have a movement which in itself is almost half an hour long, like for instance the final movement of Das Lied von der Erde, you only really get to read through it, and then you have to go away for 15 minutes. So the interruptions are not conducive to great rehearsing. But we've done it. And I have to say, so many orchestras have completely closed down this year because of the situation, the financial stress it is, as well as the safety issues. I'm so grateful to this orchestra, and I applaud this orchestra, and I'm proud of this orchestra for being able to have a season. We did actually have to cancel one concert.
Right.
But other than that, we've had, in this capacity, the way we've done it, we've had a full season.
Right.
And that's been great.
Yeah, we did cancel the November concert, as people may remember, because that was a time when things were spiking nationwide, and particularly Minnesota, North Dakota, South Dakota. It was just best to cancel that. Safety's got to be at the heart of what we do for the musicians, for Chris, for the staff who are here helping us at NDSU. So that one we canceled, but the rest we've managed to put on with all these safety protocols, the CDC, the state, the county, the city, NDSU, all of these protocols. And we've had some musicians test positive, but before they got to rehearsals, and so we replaced them, and we haven't
That's
really
true. That's
had
also
any.
been a challenge. In fact, we've had some of our sort of first chair principal players actually have to withdraw due to that and be replaced at the last minute. Again, definitely not an ideal situation,
Right,
but we've
right.
done it.
And that just adds to the imbalance that you've felt in trying to schedule, but then at the last minute in trying to find the replacements. That falls to our personnel manager,
Right.
who's very, very capable. But it's still a challenge. So we do our best to keep everybody safe. We've not had any, that incident with a choir in the Pacific Northwest a year ago where 52 people got ill at a rehearsal, and nothing like that here. We've obeyed all the protocols, and I think that's been a good thing. So let's look ahead a little bit if we can. We are hoping to release the dates for next season within the next few weeks. By this time, many of you will know that the dates would have been available and the repertoire available, and season ticket holders would be ready to renew now or in the near future. Because of the uncertainty that Chris mentioned, we're planning for a full season next year. We're planning for a normal season. That means a Saturday night and a Sunday afternoon concert. We're hoping that vaccinations and all the other factors will allow us to return to that. We're hoping that a live audience comes back with that too. Chris can talk to this, but our musicians are so grateful to see each other when they get to rehearsals. That's one thing they miss, and the other thing is having an audience, and we're looking forward to welcoming all of you back. But we're planning on 5 concert cycles next year in the normal September, November, January, March, April. You want to talk about your ideas?
A little bit, yeah. I'd prefer not to. Well, not all the details have been put into place yet anyway, and I don't think this is the time to talk about the specifics. But what I do have in mind, we have in mind is to have a season which perhaps in some ways reflects a new beginning, a post-COVID sense. I think I'll leave it at that, but that's kind of a thread which will go throughout. Undoubtedly, we will, God willing, we will come back to full orchestral forces, at least for the second half of the season, but hopefully actually for the entire season. And we will be inviting back soloists who we unfortunately had to cancel, I'd like to say postpone, from actually last season. So there is going to be that mix. And also, when I say new beginnings, I also mean something that we've actually done this season, which is actually programming works and trends which aren't the normal, let's say, Bach, Beethoven, Brahms fare. That doesn't mean we won't have it. On the contrary, there'll be all of our usual stuff, but also thrown into the mix something actually representing some of the issues that we are having today about people being underrepresented in the arts. Maybe some music which is just, not dead white guys, put it that way.
Yeah, right. And we've done a little bit, as you said. George Walker,
Absolutely.
etc.
So those combinations are what I'm hoping will be presented next season.
Right. Good.